More on this, we're now joined by Mahfouz Raffee, Equal Education Researcher, and he joins us via our telephone line. Mahfouz, thank you so much for joining us this evening here in SABC News. Let's start off here. What are you hoping to hear from the budget speech later this week?
Good evening, Mbalita. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It is an election year, so we're hoping that the government will realize that the cuts that it instituted across the board last year are unsustainable and realistic. Like, schools cannot be operating on budget cuts, so there has to be an increase in education spending. We're hoping that it will be at least in line with inflation, but indeed a lot more than that is needed to fix some of the severe infrastructure and schooling educational backlogs that we face in this country.
And Mahfouz, should we see any budget cuts in the education sector, how will this affect learners as well as students?
Look, we simply can't afford any more budget cuts. We need to invest in the future of our country. We need to invest in education. Any cuts now will face tremendous costs later. At the moment, close to 4,000 schools still use pit latrines, which are dangerous and illegal. We've seen that students have unfortunately passed away trying to access these unsafe sanitary conditions. More than 2/3 of schools don't have computer labs. More than 75% of schools don't have libraries, and more than 80% of schools don't have science labs. These are infrastructure backlogs that really need to be fixed. They're not only infrastructure that schools are required to have, but they will make a tremendous impact on the quality of education and learning that learners are able to go to. So we do need extra funding for this, and any budget cuts will just make this bad situation, make these backlogs even worse, and won't be able to provide students with quality and equal education, and that's a constitutional obligation. It's an immediately realizable right under the Constitution. That means the government has to immediately fund these things, and so simply budget cuts, in my opinion, would be illegal and unconstitutional given the state of education in this country.
And what can the Finance Minister do in order to avoid budget cuts and prioritize education?
Look, indeed, it's been stressed all over the media. It's been stressed by the government for many years now that fiscal consolidation is necessary, or austerity is necessary. But really, if we look, the government has an obligation to maximize its available resources to protect socioeconomic rights, including education, and that's really what it needs to do in the budget. So if it decides to cut spending, which is one option it can take, it needs to do this in a more targeted way. It needs to cut spending in areas where it won't affect the poor as drastically as it has and as drastically as it will if it cut education. The government also should try and look at more different and more innovative ways of raising funds for the fiscus. There's a range of different options proposed by various economists, including tax increases, but also looking at drawing on our gold and foreign exchange contingency reserves and mobilizing public resources that are already sort of within the government ambit, certainly, like, for example, Government Employees Pension Fund or the Industrial Development Corporation, for example.
Mahfouz, why would you say that it's important for us to actually prioritize the budget for the education sector, especially in a country like ours that suffers from so much inequality?
Look, we've experienced what it means to not prioritize education. We've seen the effects of under-education, and we live with it today, and it's dire, it's drastic. It creates more inequality, it decreases opportunities, and we're living with one of the highest rates of unemployment in the world, one of the highest rates of inequality in the world. And so cuts to education would necessarily exacerbate and replicate those sorts of conditions, and it's really lots of studies have shown that sort of cuts to social spending, fiscal consolidation measures to lead to political instability, and that's something that we can't afford as a society, as a country that wants to develop, that wants to grow. And like I said, the Constitution guarantees that education, the right to basic education, is an immediately realizable right, and therefore the budget, as a part of the country's set of laws, needs to conform in that regard.
And should we see a budget cut, going back to that topic, do you think that potential changes could result in an increase in student protests?
Look, undoubtedly, we've already seen some drastic and dire situations that have unfolded with cuts to the NSFAS funding at universities. Indeed, equal education ourselves and amongst the communities we organize in and parents that we organize in have lodged protests against delayed admissions due to underfunding of school infrastructure, not building enough schools to service the growing populations, especially urban areas like Gauteng and Western Cape. And it's simply that it's not that people want to protest. We have to go there as a matter of necessity to ensure that we can access the right to education. So budget cuts would more than likely deprive people of their right to education, and people on the ground, students, learners, parents, and teachers will have little choice but to voice their displeasure through protest action and other means.
Mahfouz, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Mahfouz Raffee, Equal Education Researcher.